Hard to see. Welcome, everyone. We are so pleased that you are here to our first legislative forum. We're going to wait about another minute or two, but while we're waiting, we invite you to please put your name, your county, your years of service, and your role in the chat so we can all see who's joining us. And just excited to have you here. We have 24 counties represented, at least who registered. And so we're excited to learn that, the level of interest. And yeah, thank you guys. We have Monterey, 27 years. Wow, that's awesome. Let's see who's here. El Dorado, that's my neighbor here. Great. Janet, nice to see you. So please, yeah, put your name in the chat, your county, and your years of service and your role. And as people roll in, I'm going to just say a few welcoming words. So the first is just thank you all for being here. For those of you who are just checking us out for the first time and are new to the Association of the California County Boards of Education, we're very, very excited that you're here. And we obviously hope you'll consider joining us. So I'm going to wait just another minute. For those of you that are just entering, if you could put your name, your county, your years of service, and your role, we would appreciate it so we can all get to know each other a little bit. And I was always just saying that we have 24 counties represented in those who registered. And for our new people who are just checking us out tonight, we're incredibly pleased to have you here. And I also want to give a big shout out to our ACCBE board members who are here, our planning team who's helping us plan these events, and the 13 boards who've already joined ACCBE. So if you are one of those three groups, I'd like you to put a heart or a celebration symbol using your react button so we can kind of see who's already supporting and involved with ACCBE. So if you are a current board member, a planning team member, or one of the boards that have already joined us, let us know. There you go, Marcy, good to see you. Janet. And then also we want to welcome any superintendent or admin staff who are with us because your partnership is critical to our joint efforts to advocate and achieve results in changing the odds for students and families we serve. Okay, so can I have the next slide, please? There's our welcome. Again, please put your name in the chat. So the purpose of today, tonight you will be hearing from amazing and well-regarded experts in the field of legislative advocacy, literacy, and child welfare. You will increase your knowledge of the legislative and budget landscape that will impact county offices and our student population, and you will learn more deeply about literacy recovery for older students and changes to child welfare that impacts our staff and families. Throughout the evening, we invite your input and voice on challenges your county office and community face that you want to see state and federal budget, legislative, or regulatory changes around. Plus, there will be a time to ask questions of our experts. We will close with your feedback that will be used to drive our next legislative forum and our advocacy committee that will be launching soon. We are very excited about hosting this first legislative forum and the wisdom and important information our expert presenters will share tonight. This will be recorded, and the recording and the PowerPoint will be posted to our website very soon. But before we jump into this great panel of experts, I wanted to share a little bit more about ACCBE. Could I have the next slide, please? So we are a relatively new organization, the only statewide organization run by county trustees for county trustees, focused solely on issues that impact county boards and the students we serve. And here you'll see our 4 goals. The first is amplifying and advocating your voice through advocacy on policy issues that impact our county office and our vulnerable students. We will host regular forums like these to educate ourselves on critical policies, create an advocacy committee, and share with legislators and policy leaders what county boards do and what issues we care about. The second thing is we are about creating partnerships with the California County superintendents and other critical stakeholders around education and youth development so we can leverage our resources and our power base to make change. The third is we are about empowering our peers to be more effective advocates and educational leaders and skilled board members. And we are going to have quarterly networking opportunities as well as our Starting Strong series for new board members. We're really excited about this. This will include a mentoring component. All will focus on courageous leadership and good governance practices and tools. Additionally, our fourth goal is to be visionary and forward-looking to understand the landscape of the changing landscape in education and increasing our knowledge and skills to be effective advocates. So to lead us through tonight's agenda, I want to introduce our visionary vice president of the board, Dave Patterson, who works diligently and humbly to make ACCBE a reality and is passionate about shared governance. Dave will spend a few minutes getting your input on key challenges that will impact our legislative agenda, and then facilitate the rest of the meeting with our tireless spark plug, fearless leader and youth advocate, Yvonne Chan, our treasurer, and more for ACCBE. So Dave, take it away.
Great, thank you. Next slide, please. Well, good evening, everybody. Again, I'm Dr. Dave Patterson, and I'm pleased to be able to serve on the Placer County Board of Education. I'm starting my 4th term of service starting this year. Now, we're going to do a lot of stuff tonight, too much stuff tonight. We have so much good stuff, but we're going to start by listening. So throughout this webinar, you're going to hear a lot of stuff. It is going to react. You're going to react to it with saying, yeah, that's important to us. That's one of our priorities. But we're going to start by asking you to, in fact, using the chat to start telling us already what are the challenges, the top challenges your county, your students, and your families, and the districts you serve are facing. We've given you a few examples just to get your juices flowing, but I'm only going to give you a minute. So we're going to give you a minute to start throwing stuff in the chat that we're going to capture, and we're going to come back to it. But right now, you have exactly 60 seconds to throw some good stuff into the chat about the things that are most important to you and the biggest challenges. Okay, go. Some good stuff there. Teacher recruitment, funding, ADA versus actual enrollment, ethnic studies, rights of immigrant students. Yep, that's certainly hot stuff. Okay, another 5 seconds. You can keep doing it throughout. We can dual track a little bit, but let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is where we start with our overview of key budget and legislative issues that impact county offices and the students we serve. And to do that for us tonight, I'm very excited to introduce Leangela Reed, who is a partner with Capital Advisors Group. For those of you who may not know Capital Advisors, and that means, for example, new elected trustees, because everybody else does, Capital Advisors is one of the most knowledgeable and effective governmental relations organizations in California. Many county offices of education contact with Capital Advisors. I know we do at the Placer County Office of Education. So on behalf of ACCBE, I deeply appreciate that Leangela is going to join us tonight. Leangela has a tough job. She's going to give us an overview of what's coming in 2025 in just a few minutes. Leangela, the floor is yours.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Bina and Yvonne, for having me join you. You have some speakers following me who I always enjoy, particularly Dr. Yoshimura Towery. So I definitely want to keep my words short. But just wanted to let you, and luckily we're very, very early in the legislative process. As you may have heard, there was this little election a few weeks ago, and the world changed as we know it. And so and that includes in California, where nearly a third of the legislature, well, definitely over a quarter are brand new members. And so what that means is they're very much like your students just entering in. They don't know where the bathrooms are. They don't know what the schedule is. So it takes a little while for them to acclimate. In addition to that, so they're learning the process, but the legislature operates on a calendar very much like you do, a school calendar, in that it's not quite aligned with the regular calendar, but very much like your students, legislators wait till the very last minute to do the biggest and most difficult things. So legislators have roughly until the third week of February to introduce legislation. So only a few bills have been introduced so far. We're going to talk about a couple of those that I think might be of interest. And the governor constitutionally drops his proposed budget for the coming year, for the year beginning July 1 on January 10th. And he has recently done that. So I want to talk a little bit about that, but just kind of jumping, and I'm keeping a close eye on time because, as lobbyists, we get paid by the word. So it's easy to go over. Just about a year ago, we had one of the largest budget deficits in history. Because of the tremendous number of natural disasters we have, folks were able to file their taxes much later, not until November. While that was great for our citizens, it made it very difficult to plan a budget. And put a real burden on the governor and the legislature. So they worked on what they planned, did it as a 2-year plan. Luckily, we had great reserves, again, thanks to the forethought of those in charge. And we've had a pretty successful return. And so economically, we're doing pretty well. The budget is roughly balanced, and it looks like we're going to have about the governor is proposing, this could change. And we're going to talk about a couple things that could change that. The roughly a 2.43% COLA. Some folks estimated a little lower, some close to that. And some discretionary money that's going to go out to LEAs, at least is in the plan right now. Now, does that mean that you all are doing well? Absolutely not. We know that you're dealing with declining enrollment. Certainly the issues happening, the conversations happening at the federal level, as well as some of the natural disasters that have hit our state are certainly going to have an impact. It also doesn't take into consideration any collective bargaining conversations you're having, or the recent expansion of lawsuits. So there's a lot that is going to affect it. But coming down from the funding that's going to be coming from the state looks pretty good. There's not any cuts to education proposed from the governor or the budget or the legislature at this time. Now, as I said, the fires, it does look like, we are asking for quite a bit of federal money, plus our reserves right now look like we can handle it. But the governor has extended the deadline for tax filing for Los Angeles and Ventura County. Those are areas that bring in a lot of revenue. Right as they stand on their own, it probably won't have that much of an impact overall on state funds. But if we have additional disasters, that may change. In addition, with and I'm just going to call it noise happening on both sides because of the federal conversations, families are concerned. We know that there are parents keeping their kids out of school right now. We know that, and that means not just declining enrollment, declining attendance, but it means less meals being served and those areas being impacted. So we're watching those very, very closely. And when the governor revises his budget based on revenue and tax returns in May, we will have a much clearer picture. So what I'm painting is where we are now. And I think it's important to realize that we look forward to what's in there now, but we prepare for situations in case that things take a more challenging turn. Certainly the federal administration creates one of those challenges. Now, I will say that I was very impressed and pleased by the interactions we saw between the governor and President Trump relative to the wildfires. I keep my fingers crossed that they can continue to have productive conversations, because it's really about the citizens. It's about our families and communities that we need to focus, and everything else really doesn't matter when we take a step back. So, and I know with the folks that we have leading the state board under President Dr. Darling Hammond, their hearts front and center are with the students, the staff, and the LEAs and the communities first, and everything else is to the side. We hear that in their focus on a portrait of a student and a portrait of a graduate, excuse me, and the work that they're doing to move us forward in a world we yet don't know. So we will all be working together. We've also had, as I mentioned, we've have a large number of new legislative members. That means a lot of new legislative staff. Many of them look like the students that you're serving right now. And so it's more important to than ever to make sure you're having those conversations. Everyone thinks they're an expert on education because they all had one. But frankly, that's only from their perspective. And so it's really important that you're having conversations, getting to know your legislators, and letting them know what's happening in their district. Since they just don't know. And you have to recognize the Senate district is roughly 1 million people, right? It's impossible to know everything going on, and it's incumbent on us to make sure we share that information. So just briefly, I talked a little bit about our fiscal conditions, and the governor has been pretty resistant to kind of any new programs or building out. He's fully funding the ones we have: universal meals, the California Youth and Behavioral Health Initiative, which is going to be, you're going to be able to fully apply for Medi-Cal reimbursement as of January 1. So that's a great thing for us to draw down some more of those federal dollars. Also, the expanded learning program fully funded. So really checking those boxes. We may see some policy changes for maintaining a bigger revenue, just to keep some stability, because everything is based on the highest wage earners. And some of our highest wage earners sometimes tend to go a little sideways, as we've seen by some of the comments in the press and the media. So the more stability we can apply, the better. I won't bore you with numbers. I'll go straight to programs given time shortage, but happy to answer questions on if possible. But do want to talk about that we are doubling the amount for the TK add-on for staff. We know that it's going to be fully in place this year. We need more staff. So rather than 3,000 per TK ADA, we're looking at 6,000 per TK ADA, so we can get more staff in the mix. Also want to really great thing that's in the budget is the discretionary block grant. It's 1.8 billion one-time dollars, because we don't want to have an ongoing barrier. But one-time dollars, and it's going to go out on a purely ADA basis. Our back of the envelope figuring right now looks like it's going to be about $327, $330 for ADA, at least right now. We'll see how that changes, but that's currently what's being proposed, and that funding is fully discretionary. So that's nice. There's some additional dollars for teacher prep and professional development, and some fully funding for as I said, to bring the expanded learning program to full funding. But with the full expanding the with that funding comes an expanded requirement to offer the program to all TK through 6 students with LEAs of 55% or more unduplicated. So it would have to be offered to all students within that LEA. So now it doesn't have to be provided, but it does have to be offered. So important to know. Lena, I know that one of your strong areas of interest is literacy instruction. I'm pleased to say the governor's put $500 million into expanding the existing literacy coaches and reading specialist grant program. 40 million to help LEAs to begin using the recently approved reading difficulty screeners and PD for that. It's not money for the screeners because there is a free option as well as some that LEAs can purchase, but the funding is to help with PD in those areas. And then some money to expand 5 million annually through 2930 to launch the literacy network. And then some money for developing an English learner proficiency screener for TK students. Recall that we've had legislation to stop giving the LPAC to TK in kindergarten, but we know we need to have some kind of a screener in place, and that will allow us to do that. One more area I just wanted to touch on is the master plan for career education. The governor is proposing 100 million for the community colleges to expand a credit for prior learning and begin the career passport. This is to give recognition of apprenticeships and so forth done in K-12. Excuse me, fighting a bug. To recognize courses that students took in K-12 at the community college level, which is going to be great. And also to look at more pathways and a single application for all of the CTE programs. So you're not dealing with different timelines, different forms, and so forth. And that will be a tremendous benefit. And then the governor suggests using the discretionary block grant for career, for dual enrollment and expanded career pathways. So all in all, very strong in those areas. I know I'm already getting close to time, so I want to stop on the budget, but to see if there's any questions in that area that I can address before I kind of jump to some of the pieces of legislation.
Okay, then let's go to the next slide, and start throwing your questions in about budget, and then Leangela will respond to one or two of those, and then we'll go back and do some bills. Okay.
Okay.
Let's see what we've got here. Let's see. Come on. I guess for me, I'll start with one. You talked a little bit about it, but on the short run, even if there is cuts back in the federal level, they'll take a while to get here. We're pretty good for next year. Is that a reasonable assumption, or is that a bad one?
I think it depends on how bad it gets. So for example, if we see massive raids where students aren't going to school and enrollment drops really low, if it's just going to really depend on what we see coming. I don't think you could. I think that the state is, if left alone, is very stable. But I think that you know, kind of seeing how we move through the fires and the conversations continue. We know there's been a lot of appointments, a lot of executive orders. It's just hard to say right now with what's going to happen there. But we'll be coming back as we hear things. We will get them out to the field so folks can prepare.
Okay. Here's another one. No additional money for CalSTRS PERS.
Not proposed in the governor's January budget. We will continue to look for that in the revised budget, which is really where you might see something like that. But also recall the recent action by Congress to touch on to make some more make a better situation for a number of teachers who had other careers. So we see that as very positive, and we'll continue to watch for that. And we always want more money for CalSTRS and PERS. So.
I agree, and you're right about that action at the federal level. That's pretty exciting for many of our retirees and our in-process, in-service teachers and others. Okay, who are in STRS.
Absolutely. And then, what do we know about the Trump's feelings about special ed support and funding? Neither President Trump nor his appointee as Education Secretary, Linda McMahon, have come out and made any statements on IDEA. That said, there are a number of administrators across the state who are working on a bipartisan report to fully fund IDEA and are trying to work with both houses and have done a massive letter writing campaign to get folks adding on. So the momentum is growing. And I think at a level we haven't seen before. So I'm always hopeful.
Great, great. Okay. Now there's a question about the equity multiplier for alternative programs, continued funding or not. Any thoughts on that?
Yes. So the equity multiplier, I do have a note here. Let me just grab that. That's what I get when I try to do things quickly. Apologize. The equity multiplier will receive the 2.43% COLA, which
Okay.
will bring total funding for 25-26 to 310.6 million. And the administration projects the 26-27 COLA to be 3.52%.
Okay. And I'm going to one more, and then we're going to go back to so you can do the ledge piece. And this is related to any news about community schools funding.
No news, good or bad right now, on as far as I don't see them cutting it. I just am not sure if they'll be expanding it until they can make sure they get what's in the pot out there and working. So
Okay.
I think they'll be hesitant to put more in, but I would defer to anything that Dr. Yushma Tari has to say on that front. But as of right now, we're not hearing anything as far as that. But I can tell you that there's still a lot of excitement in the programs, and they are continuing to grow out in the field. So as they flourish, look for more support to be sought.
Okay. Well, I'm going to stop questioning and go back to you with your bill update. So what do you got there?
So just a couple of bills to bring to your attention. On the charter front, there is some legislation that's been introduced that's going to look at possibly integrating CalPAD system with daily attendance apportionment, and looking at kind of the non-classroom based charters. It's very, very limited right now, but I think that non-classroom based charters continue to be a conversation in the legislature. Where things will go on that front, it's not clear yet. But that is something. We've had some situations, not a lot, but there have been some issues, some areas of concern. So I think there's some folks in the legislature who are interested in this. How far it will go, not sure yet.
Okay.
A bill has to be in print for 30 days before it can even be heard, and we're not even close to getting there. So there's a lot of things that can happen between now and then. I actually once saw a bill amended 13 times in one day. So
Yes.
so we can do that. So we will keep an eye on that. Also moving forward, there's going to be a measure introduced that would create a statewide policy for internet connected devices for students rather than just it being a local policy. I think this is a little early. I have a feeling that there was probably a situation in a local arena where folks were having a really hard time trying to come up with something. Not sure where this will go, but internet connected devices, particularly the role of smartphones, as it relates to social media. I mean, if anyone has read The Anxious Generation or seen anything in these areas, we know the devastation that social media is causing, particularly for our young women. And so this is something that continues to be an issue that the legislature wants to try to address either through, but you have to balance it with safety, right? And parents' first thought goes not to social media, but I want to be able to get a hold of my child when there's an incident. So it's a difficult time. So that continues to be a conversation. And we also do have a number of social media bills, social media related bills, all in their infancy, but those are something that we'll be watching and move as they move forward. Particularly dealing with bullying after hours. We've had situations where students are bullied on Facebook and other things in the hours after school, and they have to go back and sit next to the person who was bullying them in class. How do we deal with that? How do we deal with anti-Semitic things posted and so forth? So those are going to continue to be a point of conversation for the legislature. wanted to also bring to your attention, we talked a little bit about the immigration issues. We have a number of bills on both sides of the issue, been introduced, some calling for more support for securing our borders and requiring cooperation with immigration authorities, and then other bills like AB 49 by Chair Assembly Education Chair Murat Suchi saying you have the right to deny entry to ICE on your campus and not be held without penalty. What's interesting is no matter what part of the state, I was in the far north part of the state earlier, this on Friday and Saturday, I will be in the southern part of the state, but to a word, what I hear from administrators across the board is, you're not coming on my campus and messing with my kids. And it doesn't matter what color the area is. That's what I'm hearing across the state. But we do have some legislators pushing on those fronts and again, early in the process, we'll see where they go. I don't see the ones calling for support of ICE and so forth getting any traction in the legislature. It's just from someone who's been around a really long time. But I also don't, we also have to remember that federal law supersedes state law. So we just have to watch these carefully. Also, I would encourage all of you that if you have incidences, for example, we had an incident in a county where they did an ICE raid, not on school campus, but in the county. The next day, 500 students, they served 500 less meals in that district for students. So something to keep an eye on. Keep your legislators, keep ACCBE apprised. We need that information to make sure when we talk to our federal counterparts, they know what's going on. And then just very briefly, there is a bill that's been reintroduced calling for school armed on campuses. That will it's already gotten more time in the press than it will ever get in committee. So I say that to assure you, but that is moving forward. And then lastly, two other bills specific to your interests. One is a bill, Assembly Bill 320 by Assembly Member Bennett. This calls that when a student serves on a county board or a district board, any kind of compensation or anything that they get for serving on those boards cannot be considered income for purposes of scholarships or financial aid. So it's a technical bill, but it's really important to allow students continue to do that. And then the other is, as you know, many districts have health days to provide screenings and so forth. A bill by Assemblymember Ward would extend would require department to include county offices, the Department of Education, to include county offices and charters in those provisions, so they can be holding those screenings and so forth as well. So there's going to be a lot more bills coming at you in the next few weeks to come. This is just a few. It's important to note that even though we have a bill introduction limit of 35 bills per legislator over the 2-year legislative session, and they will all hit it. That doesn't count resolutions and for urgency and so forth, that we usually have approximately 5,000 bills introduced over a 2-year session. Roughly half of those become law. As my Southern Baptist grandma used to say, aren't 10 commandments enough? Apparently not in California. So with that, I will stop and answer any questions you might have.
Well, actually, we've only got a minute or two for questions. And if we don't get answers to all your questions, which you're going to put in the chat, we will get back to you. But Angela, there is so much to talk about that the next time we need a much more extended session with you. But the one piece I'll make note is that as Mike Greer put in there, the Rural Schools Act, which many of our counties and rural schools are such a hole for them, that he was indicating that there seems to be a lot of interest, and maybe it'll be tacked onto a bill in March. I certainly hope so.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry, I would just echo, I was with some folks very heavily involved in the Rural Schools Act. I was up in in Modoc County. And that was the exact words that I heard there too. So we are cautiously optimistic, but very excited.
Great. Leangela, I want to thank you. I know you're on the road as of tomorrow, so stay as long as you can, but if we don't, but escape if you need to. So with that, thank you again, and I turn it over to Yvonne Chan. Yvonne.
Yes, and good evening. I am Yvonne, and I serve on the Los Angeles County Board of Education. And tonight is such a pleasure to introduce two very special friends, but also they're the great speaker for a very, I think, two very, very important issues that are facing us. So first, I would like to introduce Dr. Allison Yoshimoto Tawari. And she's the executive director of the UC-USC Collaborative for Neuroscience. But she's a former chief academic officer of Los Angeles Unified School District, where I work with her. And of course, currently she's actually on the California State Board of Education. So let's welcome Allison. Floor is yours. Unmute.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Somebody unmuted me. Thank you. So Leangela, thank you for your wise words. I always appreciate everything. I took out my pen and started taking lots of notes. To start with a little bit of humor, I just caught a little typo, which is probably my fault. But in this slide, it's the USC is our competitor at UCLA, right? So I work at UCLA, and we just have to rearrange those letters a little bit. And the name of the collaborative is with the CSUs. So I'll start with that little bit of humor. And just say thank you for having me tonight. As Yvonne said, I come, to you as both a parent, teacher, a principal. And while I do serve on the State Board of Education, everything I'm going to say tonight is actually from my other hat and perspective, as an executive director of the California Institute and the UC-CSU Collaborative. So I'll just throw that little disclaimer in. Yes, go Bruins. Thank you. So on the next slide, I'll just share a quick overview. One more that today I'm just going to give you a brief overview of both institutes, and also share some bright spots that I've seen across the state in the work that we've done in the institutes, and then also share some wonderings as you're thinking about your journey with ACCBE. And on the next slide, you'll really see that the research has been clear, as you know, that our young people face daunting hurdles when they don't learn how to read, and third grade, as you know, is a pivotal point. So I think you'll hear me say later that what happens, after third grade, for our young people, and particularly those that you serve in the county schools. And in my experience, young people, and what research says, is that they rarely catch up unless we do something radically different. And I like this quote also because it also shows that young people, when they learn how to read, reading actually helps them learn how to read even better, because you learn vocabulary and access to things that you didn't know before. So it's this cycle that builds itself and is really important for our young people. And I just wanted to share a little bit of background. On the next slide, you'll see that as you know, that we've been on a significant journey in California, and you'll hear Linda Darling-Hammond say that there was a time where we were regarded very highly in the nation in terms of how much we were funded per capita. But there was a time where there was a documentary made called First to Worst, that California, after the Great Recession, had just really lost our footing in terms of our funding. And that when Governor Brown took over and Mike Kirst as the state board president, and they really tried to build us back up. And since then, through LCFF, we've had a lot of significant markers on our road to increasing our language and literacy for our young people in California, including a strong ELD, ELA framework that's joint and combined, dyslexia guidelines, comprehensive state literacy plan. We now have 2 people assigned at the California Department of Education solely in charge of literacy. The literacy coaches that Leangela spoke about, and a literacy roadmap that's forthcoming. So there's a lot of work that's been done. And in regard to the role of the students that you predominantly serve, if you recall, Senate Bill 823 was the one that had closed the Division of Juvenile Justice, which was closed in 2023, and transitioned all of our youth back to what we would say our communities closer to home and in our county offices. It's also the Senate bill that created the Office of Youth and Community Restoration, or otherwise known as OYCR. And really, this approach is really more focused on trauma-informed care, ensuring that we have proper data collection and reporting so we can support our youth outcomes. They have an ombudsperson service, and really to highlight best practices. And so on the next slide, I'll just have 2 quick slides to talk about the California Institute. The legislature also passed a bill to create the California Institute, which is a legislative partner to OYCR. And specific to our youth and secure youth facility treatments in the county schools, or really this approach, which was not just education. Don't try to fix reading just looking through the education lens, but we have young people who need record expungement. We have neuroscience that tells us that adolescents go through something similar to what our terrible twos, our young toddlers go through. And so when all that's happening in the brain and the brain's still developing, sometimes decisions are made that should not affect a child's or a youth's the rest of their life. And so we created an institute across UCLA, UC Law, San Francisco, formerly known as Hastings, and UCSF, to approach it from a multi-interdisciplinary approach to supporting the transition of youth back to the county offices as well. So we would love to have a conversation with your team or your organization as well, to see how we might be able to partner. On the next slide, you'll see that our goals are fairly straightforward. We have 4 of them, but it's really continually around that interdisciplinary research. So not just education, but legal implications. How do we think about something like increasing literacy, taking into account social economic factors as well? And we have a researcher studying even the fact that school discipline in and of itself creates trauma for young people. So really looking at this from a longitudinal standpoint as well. So I wanted to share that. And then the other institute that I work with is the UC CSU Collaborative. And on the next slide, you'll see a few statistics. This is really, we talk about declining enrollment in California, which we have, but that 13%, our students with disabilities are actually increasing. The percentage, even though we have declining enrollment, the percentage of students with disabilities is actually increasing slightly from year to year. And we estimate that up to 20% of students experience learning difficulty or with attention. And at the same time, this is not on the slide, we just read a national study that said only about 30% of our teachers feel adequately prepared to support learners that struggle to learn. And so that's a really important statistic when we think about teacher retention, teacher recruitment. Do teachers have efficacy in the work that they do every day? And so the collaborative is designed, if you see on the next slide, to connect research happening across both systems, the UC and the CSU, see geographically, because together the R1 research institutions are on the left, and you have the CSUs on the right, which are doing, upwards of almost half of preparing almost half the teachers in the state in our CSUs. And so it's really bridging those gaps, or bridging the 2 together. And so on the next slide, you'll see a series of modules that we've been working on to support asynchronous modules to support, since we've passed the dyslexia guidelines in California, and to really help not only teachers and educators, but to help faculty that teach in teacher education programs who may or may not have expertise in literacy to have access to high quality resources that match to the expectations that they have to teach on their syllabi and to get passed at the CTC, the credentialing body in California. And on the next slide, you'll see all of our resources live in this hub, state-funded hub, free professional development, free login, and we're working with county offices. So many of your county offices on the instructional side to also think about what resources they might have that are applicable to also across the state for higher education to match to the teacher performance expectations as well. So I invite you to look at that, to give us any suggestions if you have other trainings that you'd like to have developed. And what we've seen across the state, I'm going to transition to some bright spots really quickly, is on the next slide, just that what we see is that it is possible in the county offices of ed, we are seeing bright spots of literacy improvement happening, and that it doesn't take a significantly long time to improve literacy when the conditions are right. And in addition to that, we're working with a young adult court in the northern part of California, really to highlight some of their effective practices in thinking about ways that students have a least restrictive placement. So some students are working their sentence off while living in a least restrictive placement, which is not a secure use facility treatment. They can come and go. Many of them have an ankle bracelet, but they can come and go, and they go to school. So while they're earning their sentence, working their sentence off, and we see that again as a really highly effective place of potential partnership across the state to really give kids access to the high school diploma, to have earning capability, and to really be able to have post-secondary opportunities. And you may or may not be aware of this. I wasn't aware of this until the last few years, but there are college programs to support our younger adults that have been in the carceral system at all three segments of the public university system. So Rising Scholars, Project Rebound, and Underground Scholars. And on the next slide, you'll see I just gave a little bit of more information about Rising Scholars, particularly at the community colleges, because there are so many more of them. And you could see the numbers there. And while I'm really happy to see those numbers, I also think wow, we have a great opportunity for growth and even more colleges that partner with our youth facilities and provide, on-campus programs for our students that want to, really pursue an alternative. And just because I live in Southern California and I'm an LA native, I'll share in the chat a little bit about the fire camps. That we do have 9 community colleges that provide college pathways in our fire camps for our youth as well. And we're grateful for their support. And on the next slide, I'll just share briefly what we've learned is that across the board, students have been very interested as we do interviews in understanding their own brains. What goes on in there, how the decision making happens, what their strengths are. They tend to, and we've noticed that not all of our assessment tools are sensitive enough or accurate enough for our students, and so we really see that as a need as well. But hands down, kids are always interested in building their skills, particularly as it relates to their ability to earn income, become independent, get driver's licenses, etc. It really gives them the freedom that they need and seek. And it's so connected, we find, to other non-educational things like sleep, exercise, right? How nutrition and other, access to arts and those types of things as well. And the last bullet just really talks about that, it is possible to teach literacy given the right conditions. And I just have 4 more slides left. I think on the next one, I will just share last year, there were 2 bills passed, assembly bills that are relevant, particularly for the context of students that you serve primarily. And one is AB 2181. And really this allowed for a 5th year of instruction for our students in juvenile court schools, and really aimed to align the graduation requirements to those of our foster youth and students experiencing homelessness, and provided also for continuing education. And AB 2176, which really is trying to understand and get data around chronic absenteeism, and kind of in the spirit of that also is thinking about what does ideal access to classroom instruction look like? Because right now, sometimes students get credit for being at school, even when they're in their housing unit, and the teachers are pushing into there. And when I've been in that situation, oftentimes, there's a lot going on, and it's hard for me to concentrate sometimes in those situations, and the students have packets. And so really thinking about, what does it mean to be present in school? And how do we work with our probation partners to think about equal, getting students to the classroom setting as well? Especially because a lot of our students in those situations it's pre-adjudication, right? They're sort of on hold, and we want to make sure we're not denying them access to classroom environments. And then, as Lee Angela said on the next slide, so I won't go over this next slide very long, but kindergarten through grade 2, starting the next school year, will be required to use a screening instrument, not to diagnose reading difficulties, but to flag potential reading difficulties. And so, as you'll see on my next slide, which is really just my wonderings, is like, what happens after grade 3, after grade 2? We know there are many students that still need those kinds of supports as they get beyond 3rd grade, 4th grade, language supports as well as literacy supports. And how, as a state, what can we do? These are the things that keep me up at night, right? To ensure that professional development and the credentialing is in place so that all of our students have teachers that feel ready to be in the classroom, and that we have especially for our students that are in and out of your county schools, like that smooth transitions as they move in and out. Many are also in the foster youth system. And just to skip down towards the bottom, we have some really exciting things happening, as I said, in the least restrictive placement world, the young adult court world. And we're really exploring the use of credible messengers, because I think, and this is just Allison speaking, that, I know lots of people that are really good at teaching reading. And I know also lots of people that have really great relationships with kids that we're serving in our county court schools. And they're not always the same person, right? So how do we work together to think maybe differently about how we teach literacy, and maybe how do we combine the expertise with the people who have really strong relationships with our students, so that they feel safe? And I'm excited to hear our next speaker as well, as we think about those behavioral health components and the community school components. So I'm happy to partner with you in any way. On the next slide is my email address, and would happy to be, thrilled to work with ACCBE. You think about any kind of learning sessions or speaker series that you'd like to have. We'd love to bring OICR to talk about how to partner, or any new legislation. We have experts certainly like on things like loneliness, peer relations, et cetera, that we'd love to figure out how to work together. Thanks for having me tonight. And I look forward to
Well, Allison, look at that. We already have a partners that I love in the first sight. Look at this. This is how partnership grows and how we can better serve, our kids. So I know I already seen some questions coming up. Marcy, thank you for all those. I saw your question. Let me maybe, introduce our next speaker, because all of these are related. And then we will entertain some questions. Okay, our next speaker actually is a great mentor of mine. We met not long ago, but yet meanwhile, I've heard of her work long ago, and that is Dr. Tamara Hunter. And she was the executive director way back for the LA County Commission for Children and Families. But currently, she has a very important role. She is the interim executive director of a new commission It's called the Commission on Prevention and Promotion. And she's going to share with us some major changes in mandated reporting and how we better serve our most vulnerable students. So Pamela, you're on.
Thank you, Dr. Chan, and good evening, everyone. It's really good to be in this space with you. I have much to share, but not much time, so I will move through my slides quickly. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide. There has been increasing recognition about the recognition of the fact that the best way to ensure that children are safe, are healthy, and well in the broadest sense of those terms is to ensure that their families are thriving. And going upstream to bolster our ecosystems of preventive services, supports, resources, and opportunities is part of the answer. And we see evidence of this through state and federal level investments. For example, some of you may be familiar with Family First Prevention Services Act in your county, certainly through the investments into the community schools initiatives. And related to this recognition that focusing on prevention is critically important, there's also significant movement to reduce our over-reliance on the child welfare system whenever we are able to do so safely, right? So whenever we're able to do so while ensuring that child safety is paramount. And the reason it's important for us to reduce our reliance on the child welfare system is because, unfortunately, that system is a profound source of harm for far too many children and their families. And so today I will talk with you about efforts to reform mandated reporting, which is the gateway into the child welfare system, as well as a law that went into effect in 2023 that narrowed the definition of general neglect for mandated reporters. And this certainly relates to educators. Next slide, please. So I'd like to start with a little data. I want to begin by sharing some California data, and this is from 2023. So mandated reporters in the state of California, in each county in California, and frankly across the nation, constitute the largest group of reporters to child protection hotlines. So in California, mandated reporters make 81% of all reports to child protection hotlines. Click, please. And by far, the most common type of maltreatment that is reported to the hotline by mandated reporters is general neglect. 45% of all reports that are made allege general neglect. General neglect is a very broad and subjective category. It is very often conflated with poverty, and at times, general neglect can be influenced by poverty. Click, please. So these slides that these bars that you now see on your screen represent the percentages of reports that are made by mandated reporter type. And so you see that here in California, educators make the most reports to our child protection hotline. 23% of all reports in the state of California are made by educators. And then that's followed by law enforcement at 20.5%, mental health professionals, other professionals, which is the catch-all category for everyone else who's a mandated reporter but not listed on this slide. Medical professionals and CWS staff are child welfare services staff, so employees of child welfare services agencies. Click, please. And so now these navy blue bars that you see represent the percentages of allegations that turn out to be abuse or neglect after the Child Protective Services system has investigated. So as you can see, just a fraction of the reports that are made turn out to be abuse or neglect after they are investigated. And I want to draw your attention to educators because although they are the first or the top reporter here in California, top reporter to the Child Protective Services system, they are the second to last in terms of allegations that turn out to be abuse or neglect. So only 4.4% of reports made by educators turn out to actually be maltreatment. And there are a number of reasons for this, and I'll talk about them a little bit in the next slide. So before I overview this slide, which will lift up at a very high level, because I don't have much time with you, some of the central reasons for reform, I want to make it clear that at least LA County's work to reform mandated reporting is really predicated on the belief that there is a need for a process that allows professionals who come into contact with vulnerable children to alert the child welfare system of safety issues quickly and easily. So we know that there's a need for a mechanism such as this, but our work is also grounded in the reality that mandated reporting in its current form is a deeply, deeply flawed and harmful policy response to our responsibility as a society to ensure that children are free from harm. It is misguided, and in many ways, it is counterproductive. So you've seen in the previous slide that most reports that are made by mandated reporters are not substantiated. They don't turn out to be maltreatment. Many people are also surprised to learn that there's no conclusive evidence that mandated reporting prevents child abuse and neglect. Mandated reporting is reactive by design. The way it's currently set up offers mandated reporters a binary choice. They either report or they do not report suspected child abuse or neglect that may have already occurred. And as such, we are missing critical opportunities to prevent future abuse and neglect upstream by providing help to families who are in need. And speaking of help, mandated reporting actually has a chilling effect on help-seeking behaviors. And when families are afraid to seek help because they're afraid of being reported, they go underground. And when they go underground, children are less safe. So this is one really important way in which this current practice actually increases risk for children. As in education, the child welfare system, my space, the child welfare field, has a deep problem with racial justice. Racial disproportionality is rampant in the child welfare system, and Black children are overrepresented at every major milestone along the child welfare services continuum. Black children are reported, investigated, and placed in foster care at rates that are more than triple their rates in the general population. And then they go on to exit the foster care system and be more likely to exit into homelessness, to exit into the criminal justice system, or to return to the child welfare system as a parent. Studies have shown that mandated reporter decision-making is influenced by factors that may be altogether distinct from actual concern about abuse or neglect. These factors include bias that's based on race, bias based on socioeconomic status or class. Certainly fear is a motivator. It's a driver of reporting, fear of personal or organizational liability. And many mandated reporters actually make reports to child protection hotlines because they're trying to get help for families who are in need. In LA County, 65% of mandated reporters who acknowledged reporting when they didn't suspect abuse or neglect indicated that making a report to the hotline is actually the best way to get help for a family in need. It is not, but this is a belief that many mandated reporters have. In LA County, we engaged more than 2,000 mandated reporters, and we learned and we heard from them that they feel inadequately prepared and supported to make sound reporting decisions. And this means making decisions that are accurate. And this really aligns with what the research tells us. And more specifically in LA County, we heard directly from educators that they feel alone when it comes to this issue. They've indicated that they need more than what they get from the annual training that they must take every year. These are your folks, and they are in need of help. And when mandated reporters are ill-equipped to carry out this incredibly consequential responsibility that we have given them, we see over-reporting of families who do not need the child welfare system in their lives, and we saw some of that in the previous slide. But as importantly, we see under-reporting of children who may actually be unsafe. And finally, and perhaps one of the most compelling reasons to reform mandated reporting is that we have created a system that pits the best interest of mandated reporters and their organizations against the best interests of the families that we serve. We've created this dynamic. Next slide, please. And so in 2023, in effort to remedy some of this, the state of California enacted legislation, Assembly Bill 2085, which narrowed the definition of general neglect for mandated reporters in California. So general neglect is defined as a parent's negligent failure to provide adequate food, clothing, shelter, medical care, or supervision when no physical injury has occurred to the child, but that child is in substantial risk of serious physical harm or serious illness. So now general neglect is tied to a child being at risk of serious physical harm or illness. AB 2085 also provides that economic disadvantage is not general neglect. And this is an effort to separate need from neglect, to separate poverty from a general neglect allegation. Next slide. And so the legislative intent of AB 2085 is to address some of those concerns that I lifted up on the previous slides. I spoke already about the conflation of poverty and neglect. It is an effort to address over-reporting the space that's done due to race and class, and certainly to address racial disproportionality. I didn't include this on the previous slide, but when child welfare systems, when the child welfare hotline or child protection hotline is overburdened by reports of families who don't need that level of intervention, but are in need, the system has fewer resources for children who are truly unsafe. And in LA County, our director of our child welfare system agency is a tremendous partner and a champion in this work. And he once said at a convening, that there is so much smoke that his people cannot see the fire. And so that's an example of how over-reporting and unnecessary reporting of families who can have their needs met in community creates additional risk for children. And the last thing I'll lift up on this slide is that obviously, we all must comply with AB 2085 because it is law, but it also presents a tremendous opportunity to further whole family approaches in education. Next slide, please. So in LA County, our Office of Education is co-leading this reform effort in partnership with organizations and traditional school districts, as well as charter school districts like Vaughan Next Century Learning Academy. And we're partnering very closely with organizations who want to be a part of the solution and want to improve this policy for students and their families, as well as for their staff. And so last year, we released a training on AB 2085, which is available as an e-learning or available in slide deck form for organizations that wish to provide instructor-led trainings. AB 2085 also includes a module for educators. So the training materials that we developed to operationalize and implement AB 2085 includes an array of decision support tools. So we provide a decision support process that walks a mandated reporter through what they should consider when they have a concern that they may want to report as suspected general neglect. And most importantly, our training includes a general neglect decision tree for mandators to use when they are concerned about potential neglect. The decision tree has 4 simple questions that a mandated reporter will answer about their concern, and then they will receive one of 3 recommendations. The first recommendation is to make a report to DCF, to Child Protective Services, because their concern does rise to that threshold. The second recommendation is to actually consult with the Child Protective Services Agency because they're either unsure or the issue that they've reported is in that gray zone. And the final recommendation that you receive from this decision tree is what we call the game changer, because it prompts mandated reporters to refer families to supportive resources because there's no need to make a report to Child Protective Services, but that family may be in need of supportive services, of preventive services to prevent child abuse and neglect from occurring later down the line. AB 2085 is a California law. So the training, the decision tree, the 5-step decision support process, and the other tools that we have available are on our website, and they can be used and adapted by any county in the state of California. So in this next slide, I've included contact information. So supportingfamilies.lacounty.gov is the website for our initiative. It's called the Mandated Supporting Initiative. And that's where you can find our training, our materials for mandated reporters to utilize. And you also have my email address. And the link below is to our County Office of Education's website about the initiative, and also contact information for the lead on this work at our Office of Education. We will certainly be happy to meet with any of you to discuss the tools that are available, or to provide a much slower and more robust version of this presentation if you want more of a deeper dive into the why of mandated reporting reform and how you can be a part of the solution at the individual level, the organizational level, and at the systems level. Thank you.
Wow, Dr. Hunter, thank you so much. This is, yeah. This, both you and Allison, I call you Allison, my friend, really have given us so much to think about. A lot of great ideas for our group, ACCBE, to form our legislative or advocacy efforts moving forward. And I'm sure that this is not the one time that both of you are with us. We are definitely going to be best friends forever. And I know that we have a little survey coming up, but still, David, let's all thank all three presenters. Come on. It is well done, well done. The materials will be available in our website under resource. You go to resource, you will see our handbook. I know we have 10 newly elected trustees among us right now. So be our guest, whether your county have joined us or not. We are very inclusive. Just, you need it, go to our website, go to resource, and pick up what you need, okay? As we will be building a much bigger, easier, locate, with keywords type of resource library. So I know there's some questions. So Dave, will you take over to see, how you want to see if we can answer some questions while we do the survey? We are multitasking. We can do everything together at the same time.
Oh, yes, we can. So let's go to the slide where the survey is so people can actually start there, but then put your questions in the chat. Oh, maybe I don't have a slide there. Oh, okay. Yeah, there's the evaluation. Please click on that and do that. But I'm also looking at the chat, and while some things are coming up, I know from my own personal experience as being a mandated reporter, Dr. Hunter in particular, it's the trauma for staff to figure out, okay, if we do this, what's going to happen to that family? We don't really know. We know that those things are so real for anyone who's been put in that position. And you go to bed at night wondering, did I help or did I hurt? And so there is a great deal of challenge there, and I'm looking forward, frankly, to that big task you've laid out, which is we need to keep kids safe. There are times where this is in fact essential, but frankly, we need to empower families that already have challenges. We don't need to make it worse and to embarrass them and to make them feel belittled by a system that isn't doing what they need. Okay. I'm looking for some questions, people. That was my personal take from my own personal experience. Well, let's talk a little bit about what type of, for either presenter, what type of resources do we think might be coming? The challenge here is, in fact, well, at the end of the day, I'm educated on the new approach. I've had some training. I have an idea of how to work through your matrix. What type of resources do you see that's out there today and in the future that could help these students and families?
So in LA County, our approach is four-pronged, and one of those sort of prongs or pillars involves building pathways to connect mandated reporters to community-based resources easily, because we know that a teacher is not a case manager. And the last thing that we want to do is set up a system in which a teacher has to spend hours combing the internet to identify supportive resources for the family. So part of our effort involves sort of building a community pathway to services and supports. So what we do is always encourage mandated reporters in education to tap into the wealth of resources that are available within their districts. So that's the first place we encourage educators to go. But in LA County, we have also developed a web-based information system called the Family Resource Finder. And in that Family Resource Finder, we've curated resources to address the types of issues that a mandated reporter is likely to see and consider, and the type of issues that will make someone want to consider a report. So we're trying to make it as easy as it is to pick up the phone and make a report to the Child Protection Hotline for mandated reporters. I would love to be invited back in a few months to meet with this group. We have some legislation that we will be introducing down in LA County, which is going to address one of the biggest challenges that we have experienced in this work, and that's the fear of liability. I've had so many organizations, so many educators tell me that I agree with absolutely everything that you say, but liability. So we're hoping to introduce some legislation that will loosen that and sort of provide the safety that organizations need to try a new approach.
Great. Okay, I've got, if we don't cover all the questions, we'll come back to it, but I've got one more that I'm going to throw out there, and that's Marcy, Dr. Towery. You mentioned credible messengers, and she's looking for a better understanding. And you're muted. Unmute that woman. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you. A credible messenger model is one that puts individuals with shared life experiences similar to what our youth have, for say neighborhoods, marginalized communities, or even gang or incarceration history, to serve as mentors. And sometimes we're still researching a lot about the effectiveness of that model, but it's being used increasingly more as an approach to work with our youth involved in the juvenile justice system, to have a mentor that really understands where their lived experience has been.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to turn it back to Bina to take us to the end and add anything we need to along the way. Thank you.
Hey, well, we very much appreciate you all being here. Is there a next step slide as well? Okay. Yeah, so we hope first we would love for you to fill out the evaluation because it'll inform our next legislative forum and our legislative advocacy work. We'd love for you to obviously join ACCBE if you haven't, and join our legislative advocacy committee, which will be starting up soon, so we can actually get our legislative strategy developed. And we just want to make a shout out to those of our new board members who joined us. And if you know a new county board member, if you would ask them to come to our February 3rd, Starting Strong, first of a series of events we're going to do for new county board members, which includes a mentoring component. So with that, we are very grateful to all of you for being here, and just want to thank you. And Dave or Yvonne, if you have any last closing words.
Mine are only thank you to everyone for being here, but especially to our presenters. I am looking forward to much more engagement. This has been a great a great session, but I want more. And I know a lot of people want more. So we'll give you more time. We'll do more hands-on. This is exciting. Yvonne?
And I ditto that, my friend Allison and Tamara. And definitely you will hear from me. And we will certainly would like to see if there are counties who want to pilot, some of these, the programs so that we can kind of really test, field test some of these, strategies you talk about and alongside with the legislation that allow us to do that. So with that, see you later.
Yes. Thank you again, everyone,
Thank
and
you.
to our speakers.
And thank you. Good
We'll,
night.
we'll hang out a little bit too if people want to stay and chat or ask questions.